In 2018, Nike made the decision to put Colin Kaepernick at the center of an ad campaign devoted to overcoming obstacles and achieving dreams. The ad campaign was controversial, of course. People posted videos of them online destroying Nike clothing, saying they would never again buy Nike products, and saying that Nike was out of place wading into such a political debate about police brutality and whether or not to stand for the American flag. But despite all of the negative protests, Nike stuck by Kaepernick throughout the ad campaign, even after upset fans organized a boycott to protest the company's political activism. And even though it appeared to be a risky decision, Nike's ad campaign paid off. Over the next month, Nike's stock rose 5% as the company's overall value increased by $6 billion. And under the influence of Kaepernick, Nike's continued to take controversial political decisions, most recently yanking an American flag sneaker with the Betsy Ross flag on it because of its connection to slavery. While Nike's publicity stunts, as I'm going to call them, have been designed to attract a lot of attention in the US, and they've actually kind of succeeded in that goal. Even President Trump has tweeted about the company on Twitter. The company's real growth has actually come from its expansion in the Chinese market. According to the Wall Street Journal, Nike has enjoyed double-digit percentage growth in China every quarter for the last 5 years, and in September of 2019, Nike's chief executive Mark Parker went as far as to claim Nike is a brand of China, for China, and the results continue to bear that out. Of China, for China. That's an incredible line from a company who was founded in the United States, whose headquarters are in Oregon, and which has almost 400 American stores. Nike has only been able to expand abroad because of its success in the US market, success that Nike's executives now might be willing to gloss over, but still has a huge impact on the company's bottom line. Of China for China goes to show how shallow Nike's political activism really is. When Colin Kaepernick says, "Believe in something even if it means sacrificing everything," that really translates to take measured stances on domestic political issues that will help with publicity but won't impact the bottom line at all. How do we know this? Well, Nike's political voice gets a whole lot softer when there are actual financial consequences on the line. Just this month, Nike made the decision to pull all Houston Rockets merchandise from Chinese stores after the NBA team's general manager tweeted in support of the Hong Kong protests. That decision definitely wasn't made by patriots willing to sacrifice a ton to uphold their moral values. It was made by company executives who really didn't want to lose their $4 billion stake in the Chinese market. And just so we're clear, Nike is far from the only company guilty of hypocrisy in this matter. The NBA itself handled the situation similarly, issuing a public apology for, quote, deeply offending many of our friends and fans in China. Golden State Warriors coach Steve Kerr went as far as to parrot Chinese rhetoric about the US, accusing America of being guilty of the exact same types of crimes that the Chinese government commits. Watch.
Has it ever come up that the NBA's business interests in China are at odds with a country whose human rights record is not in step with the United States?
It has not come up in terms of people asking me about it, people discussing it. No. Nor has our record of human rights abuses come up either. Things that our country needs to look at and resolve, that hasn't come up either. So none of us are perfect, and we all have different issues that we have to get to. And saying that is my right as an American. But people in China didn't ask me about, people owning AR-15s and mowing each other down in a mall. I wasn't asked that question. So we can play this game all we want and go all over the map, and there's this issue and that issue, and the world is a complex place, and there's more gray than black and white.
That video is pretty incredible. What Steve Kerr just said is Chinese propaganda. That's literally an exact talking point of the Chinese Communist Party. There's even a 45-minute documentary published by CCTV detailing the US government's many human rights abuses and saying that the US tries to paint itself as a moral human rights leader simply to preserve its hegemony. It's disgusting that Steve Kerr is parroting the Chinese government's rhetoric simply to disguise his moral cowardice in the face of pressure from the Communist Party. What makes this kind of talk even more disgusting is that the NBA often tries to portray itself as a moral leader. Remember, this is the same NBA that threatened to move all games out of Georgia after the passage of a transgender bathroom bill, and Steve Kerr is the same coach who accused President Trump of turning football into a political game with his criticism of not standing for the American flag. Getting back to the previous point though, there are plenty of other companies that have chosen to prioritize pandering to the Chinese Communist Party over standing up for democratic values. The games company Blizzard suspended a professional Hearthstone esports player player and cancelled his prize money after he spoke up in support of the Hong Kong protests. American Airlines changed descriptions listing Taiwan as a country after pushback from China's aviation authority. Apple removed an app from the App Store which helped Hong Kong protesters track police. Delta Airlines issued a public apology to the Chinese government after listing Tibet and Taiwan as countries on its website, saying the decision was a grave mistake with no political intention. There's actually a list of all the companies that have put profits over principles when it comes to China, and it's pretty disturbing how many names are actually on that list. With all that said though, there are two main takeaways from these recent controversies. First, to people who are surprised by how far Western business leaders will go to do what Chinese leadership wants, I really only have one thing to say. This isn't a shocker. I think that people who have come to look at business leaders as models of virtue have been badly misled. At the end of the day, a business is about turning profits, and there's always going to come ahead of promoting a moral cause if the two conflict. To the people who applauded Tim Cook's bravery when he called Indiana's Religious Freedom Restoration Act a license to discriminate and cancelled all Apple events in Indiana, think about how little he was actually risking to make those decisions. To celebrities who cheer Disney's and Netflix's decision to not shoot movies in states with heartbeat abortion bills, let Disney's recent censorship of ESPN employees from talking about Chinese politics be a cautionary tale about what kind of a moral leader Disney really is. And just to be clear, I'm not saying it's easy for businesses who have become embroiled in the Chinese government's censorship of Hong Kong, Xinjiang, and its other human rights abuses. As one Blizzard employee recently said in an interview to Vice News, "We're damned if we don't take a stand, we'll have lost a lot of support from fans outside of China. We're damned if we do, you can't keep the lights on when we lose income from China and other companies swoop in to take our place." I get it, it's tricky for businesses that are trying to walk a fine line between, on one hand, not losing access to a vast market of 1.3 billion people, and on the other, not kowtowing to autocrats who want the best for themselves and not for their country. But all of that just goes to re-emphasize my main point. Big business has never been, is not, and will never be the gatekeeper of right and wrong. And that brings me to my second main point. The way to convince businesses to do the right thing isn't some kind of a government mandate. In many ways, China is trying to subvert the free market by turning the biggest winners of Western business into the biggest shills of Chinese propaganda. They're able to do this because they decide what products and services are allowed in China. After all, China is the world's largest command economy. But what makes the Western free market so great is that no country can achieve that level of autocracy. When the NBA attempts to censor one of its own coaches for supporting the Hong Kong protests, the correct response isn't for Congress to pass a law dictating what the NBA must do. Rather, it's the responsibility of ordinary people to stand up and demand that the NBA do the right thing through their decisions about what to watch and what to buy. When Blizzard censors a professional Hearthstone player for standing up for Hong Kong freedom, it's imperative that we stand up and remind them that censorship isn't the easy way out. It's not enough to simply say that the CCP's view of government is wrong. Rather, it's the responsibility of Western nations to show them what a better alternative looks like in practice. People in Hong Kong, Xinjiang, Tibet, and Taiwan have witnessed the horrors of living under an autocratic government that doesn't tolerate either political or religious dissent. Americans can and should learn from the courage that protesters have shown against such overwhelming odds.
A progressive corporate culture that willfully ignores the abuse of human rights is not progressive, it is repressive. When American corporations, professional sports, pro athletes embrace censorship, it's not just wrong, it's un-American. American corporations should stand up for American values here at home and around the world.